Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Connected Falkirk CLPL session on preparing for the one-to-one classroom. During the session, please use the chat function to ask any questions which the team will respond to without interrupting the main presentation. We'll be using the chat ourselves to post relevant links throughout the afternoon, so please keep an eye out for those appearing. One final reminder that this will be recorded and put on our YouTube channel, so please be aware that if your video is on, you may appear on that broadcast. Now, we know it's been a uniquely busy academic year in which we've all learned lots of new skills, particularly related to using technology to support quality learning and teaching. Now, with pupil device rollouts continuing across the authority, this session aims to now look ahead to next year with some tips on how to best prepare for the one-to-one classroom. And with that said, I'm delighted to introduce our presenter for this afternoon, Kerry Abercrombie.
Thanks, Gav. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Connected Falkirk session on, as Gav said, preparing for the one-to-one classroom, specifically looking at resources. So today, we're going to share with you some sort of tips and practical advice on how to get ready for a one-to-one environment, looking at making the most of the multitude of resources that you already have for learning and teaching. Now, we're delighted to be joined by so many Falkirk-based educators today, and we do also welcome those of you who have joined from beyond the FK postcodes. Just a wee disclaimer, first of all, that all of the demonstrations that you're going to see today are from a connected Falkirk device, on a personal device or an iPad from another local authority. You might find that there are slight differences in permissions, but by and large, things should be the same. So, this session really is all about working smarter and not harder. If you're anything like me, you will have a hard drive somewhere that is chock full of years and years worth of resources that you've made over your career. And it's quite possible that that will also include some resources that you use centrally, perhaps alongside colleagues for certain topics, subjects, or stages. Now, obviously, teachers are extremely busy people, and we don't want to be replicating those resources or spending rakes and rakes of time making new versions of them. I think we could all agree that that's not really a productive use of time, and it's certainly not something that I wanted to spend time doing when I first worked in a one-to-one environment. So just a little introduction for those of you who I've not already met before. My name is Kerry. At the moment, I am a member of the Connected Falkirk Sprint team, but in regular life, I am a media and English teacher. And the content of today's session is very, very much based in my own experience of working in both a shared and a one-to-one environment. So at Larbert High School, we had a pilot one-to-one project for a couple of years now. My previous National 5 class were one-to-one, and I also had the luxury of 5 shared iPads in my classroom for use in media. So all these things today are essentially things that I wish that someone had told me when I was first about to step into a one-to-one environment and start using iPads every day for learning and teaching. Now, I do not claim to know all of the answers. There are some of the things today that you will see that you might think that does work for you. Some of the things you might think, not so much. As with most things in learning and teaching, there's always an element of style and there's an element of approach. Hopefully it'll be useful, but equally I'm not going to be massively offended if there are bits that you just think, nah, that's not for me. Or indeed, which is very likely the case, that you have a better and more efficient way of doing things. So just before we get started, I wanted to highlight some of the main apps on your device that I'll be referring to or using today. Now, these are all apps that come what we call baked in, which means that they are already there as standard on your device. But we will also touch on some additional apps or services that you can access on the Connected Falkirk iPad via the app portal. For Connected Falkirk people, just a quick reminder that you can request apps by emailing the central Connected Falkirk email or in secondary schools by contacting your school technician. So we've got our 3 baked in apps here. We've got Files, which is a very handy app for accessing, as you might expect, files. Pages, which is the Apple sort of word processor / desktop publishing offer. And then my personal favourite, Keynote, which on the surface appears to be a presentation software, but actually has a huge amount of versatility, which we'll perhaps see today. Now, the only reason that I am highlighting these is because many of you might be less familiar with these than their counterparts. So it's possibly likely that you're more familiar with, Word, Google Docs, PowerPoint, Google Slides, etc. I'm not saying that these apps are any better than any of those offerings, but there are perhaps some distinct advantages of getting to know these guys just a little bit better when going into a one-to-one environment. So let's get started then. We're going to start by talking about saving and accessing files. In your one-to-one environment, you're essentially going to have 3 options, and each of these have their pros and cons. And I thought we'd just start by looking at what those are. So number 1, and the one that most people will be familiar with, is saving to an external drive, so a flash drive or a hard drive, something physical that plugs into your PC. We then have cloud storage, which is becoming much more popular and has been widely used since the whole remote learning situation has hit us all. And finally, we've got saving to your device, which uses the storage on your iPad. So we'll have a wee look at the pros and cons one by one. So external storage, pros. You don't need an internet connection, which obviously is a huge benefit when you are trying to plan for delivery, because it is, of course, extremely reliable. And we've got the fact that it is the most comfortable. It's the thing that most of us have probably been using for the longest time. It's well within our comfort zones, and lots of us probably have already got pretty established routines around using USBs or hard drives. The big con here, and I'm sure you'll all have done this at some point, is that if you lose the physical thing or you forget it, you're absolutely snookered. So I know I've been there with a lesson, ready to go. I've spent ages making it. I get to school, buzzing to deliver it, and it suddenly dawns on me that I've left my USB in the computer at home. It is an extremely stressful experience, and I'm sure many of us have been there before. Moving on to cloud storage then, the pros. The first one is that it's got huge storage potential. So with your OneDrive account via Glow, you get virtually unlimited storage. The same for Google Drive, and with your iCloud, you've got 200 gigs to play with on your connected Falkirk account. You also don't have that USB issue of forgetting it or leaving it in the computer, because you can access these files anytime, anywhere, simply by logging in. And of course, something that we've all probably learned through remote learning is that cloud storage is very compatible with your virtual learning environment, especially if you are someone who makes your resources using Google services such as Docs or Slides, or Office 365 services such as PowerPoint Online or Word Online, etc. The downside to all of this is that, of course, it does require connectivity. Now, this is perhaps a good point to mention that you can make documents on your OneDrive or your Google Drive available offline, but by and large, no connectivity is potentially going to spell a problem for you with cloud storage. Finally then, saving to your device. The pros, really great for direct sharing and collaboration from your device and a pupil's device. For me, one of the biggest benefits is that you can very easily and very quickly add video or voice to projects. And perhaps very important to the equity agenda, that using apps like Keynote and Pages work intuitively with the accessibility features on the iPad, such as Speak Select or Dictation. The downside to this is that having something only on your device saves it to the device, obviously. If you put your password in wrong too many times, your device becomes disabled. And if it is disabled, the only way to fix it is for someone from the Connected Falkirk team to come and get it, and we have to wipe it in order to restore it to factory settings. So that means all the saved content to the device is gone. Now, you have got something of a little bit of a backup, because your device will automatically offload things into the iCloud to try and free up as much storage as it can. So if you've not used something for a couple of days, it'll offload it and save it there. But if you've not backed up, then it's potentially lost forever. So there is a little bit of danger in that as well. So as you can see, there really are advantages and disadvantages to all of these options. What I will say from a personal perspective is that I use a mixture of all three of these things. So it's not just about picking one. I used to be a really heavy hard drive user. I've got a 1 terabyte hard drive that is absolutely full to the brim of stuff. But when we started using our virtual learning environment about 4 years ago, I found that I actually tended to move towards 2 and 3 more. I still access my hard drive every now and again, but because of the way that I prepared for one-to-one, I didn't have to do that quite so much. Now, when I say preparing for one-to-one, what I mean by that is I know lots of people who plug their hard drive into their Google Drive or their OneDrive through their computer, just left it running and copied absolutely everything from their hard drive or their flash drives over. I decided not to do that because I had so much stuff, and to be honest, lots of it was old or potentially obsolete. So what I did instead was I just uploaded to the Google Drive as and when I needed it. So perhaps if I had a class doing maybe Merchant of Venice at the start of the term, I'd go in and I'd upload all my Merchant of Venice stuff to Google Drive. And after a while, I found that actually I had everything that I used regularly. Another thing that I started doing was also started making things on OneDrive or Google Online on my laptop, rather than making them on a desktop and then having to upload them and then convert them. And I just found that was a bit of a time saver. So that's just a wee tip as well. But basically, there's no one correct answer. Find what works for you and do it that way. One important note from the famous Mr. Stuart Lenny before we move on is about security. So for security reasons, I just have to make it clear that you should not be saving anything that has sensitive data onto cloud storage services. So he wanted me to say that. I've done my piece. That's your warning from Stuart, and we can move on now. So let's take then a look at the first step to accessing files on your device. And for this, we're going to have a wee look at files. So this is Apple's file management app where you can actually access your stuff across a range of services. Now, if you've joined not on your device and you have your device there, you can feel free to join me in going in and out of these apps and kind of getting things set up as we're doing it. But as Gav's already said, we are recording this. So if I am going a bit quick and you feel you need to go back and see it again, the recording will be up on YouTube for you to have a wee look at. So I'm going to go into my home screen just now, and you will see that I already have Google Drive and OneDrive on my home screen. OneDrive there is in between BorrowBox and Slides, and my Google Drive is in between Pages and Sketchbook. So I've already downloaded those services from the app portal because I know that they are cloud storage services that I use. If I go into Files then, which is the white tile with the little blue folder on it, I've actually got it on my dock down here. What you'll see is that on the left-hand pane where it is highlighted in blue, I have access to my iCloud Drive storage already built into the app. So I don't have to get an additional app for iCloud. It's already built into my Files app. Now this left-hand pane, you can see this is where I've got access to various different locations. But at the moment, I don't have access to Google Drive or OneDrive, and that's because I need to switch these on. So what I'm going to do is on the top right-hand side of the left file pane that's a darker grey, there's 3 little dots at the top. I'm going to give that a wee tap, and that's going to give me the option to edit my sidebar at the bottom there. And I'm going to tap that. And what you'll see is that gives me access to all of the services that I can use with files. So you can see Google Drive's there, OneDrive's there. I'm just going to switch them on by toggling to green to make sure that they are there. And then I'm going to tap done at the top right where that ellipsis was before. And you'll see now in my locations on the left-hand side, I've got my iCloud Drive and my iPad, but I've now also got my Google Drive and my OneDrive. So you'll see if I tap on Google Drive here, it's going to give me, in a wee second, access to all of my Google Drive files, just in there as you would expect. And on OneDrive, what's actually going to happen is it's going to ask me to sign in. Now, the only reason it's asking me to do that is because I've not yet signed into OneDrive on this particular iPad. So I had already been into Google Drive, the app in itself, and I had logged in there, so therefore it pulls through automatically. But OneDrive, I've not yet logged in, and that's why it's asking me to authenticate or to sign in. So that's just something to note. If you're going into files for the first time and you've not already been into your Google Drive or your OneDrive, you will need to sign into them before you can see yourself. Now, another important thing perhaps to mention here is the downloads, which is just down here under the favourites. I don't know about you, but I find it quite tricky to find where my downloads have gone when I download things onto the iPad. And this is a super quick and easy way to access anything that you've downloaded on your device. It's going to be in that downloads section. So it's good to know that that's there for you to have a wee look at as well. Now, if we look on the right-hand pane, the larger white pane for a second there, you can see that no matter which location I go to, I have this grey search bar at the top. So I can scroll through my drive and find things, or equally, I can tap on search and it's going to allow me to search for whatever it is that I'm looking for. So while we're on the topic of search, I'm just going to show you something else that might be quite handy, and this is Spotlight Search. So on my home screen, which I'm just going to go to just now, I can take one finger and just drag down in the middle of the screen and it's going to bring up a search bar. So in the middle of the screen, one finger, drag down and it brings up this search bar. And if I type in something to this search bar, so I know I've got a lot of stuff on the film Black Panther, so I'll just type that in. You'll see if I search that, what it does is it searches the entire device. So it's got, at the top there, you can see my files. It's got all my Keynote files that I've got. And it also actually takes me to some perhaps internet searches, the dictionary, and so on and so forth. So that's quite a good one for if you're anything like me, where sometimes you can't actually remember where you've saved something, like what drive it's in, or like as long as you know what you've called it, you can use Spotlight Search to kind of go in and try and find out where the location is. So that's pretty handy. So what we're going to do then is, now that we have looked at accessing the files, we might want to think about sharing. So you might be using your virtual learning environment to share in class, and that is absolutely legitimate. It's definitely something that I did a lot, especially if I had, for example, a set of questions that I knew everyone was going to be working on, or a project explanation slideshow that I wanted them all to have access to. But sometimes you'll want to share things from your iPad directly to a pupil's iPad. And for this, the share button, which looks like the one that you can see on the screen, is absolutely the key. It's also where you would save things that you've made or you've downloaded on the iPad into a different location. So if you've got a picture or a video that's been sent to you from a pupil iPad to yours, you can use the share button to upload it and file it away into your OneDrive or your Google Drive. So we're going to get a little bit of this in action, and to show you this, I'm just going to go into Photos, which as a media teacher tended to be the app that I needed to use the share button for the most. So Photos, the little colourful flower. I'm in here and we'll just go to a photo of some pupil work. So this is some S2 School of Media prior work. And you can see at the top right-hand side, I've got some options. So I've got going from the left, edit, the bin, the love heart, and then that all-important share button. If I give that a little tap, it's going to open all of my options here. Now, there's a lot going on here. I'm very aware of that. But what we're mostly concerned about in this share button is this colourful bar of app tiles. Now, let's say I wanted to move this photo of pupil work into my folder of evidence for that kid that I have on Google Drive. You can see here in between notes and reminders, I have access to my Google Drive. I'm already in the photo. I've selected share. I'm now going to select drive. And that's going to bring up the start of the saving process. So it seems a little bit complicated when you first use it, but actually it's really simple. So at the bottom of this pane, the first thing it's asking me is just to check that I'm on the right account. I've actually got, if I tap this here, 2 different Google Drive accounts. I'll just make sure I'm on the right one. So I'll just say I'm on Albert High one. Underneath that, I've got select folder, and that's just so I know I'm putting it in the right place. So I'm going to choose select folder. It's going to ask me if I want to put it in my drive or a shared drive. I'm going to go my drive, and then it gives me all my folders. We'll just pop it into this RTC one just now. At the bottom right, I've got cancel or save here. This is the location I want, this RTC folder, so save here. Takes me back to this screen, but now at the top right, you will see it's giving me the option to upload. So I'll just check, yep, it's STA Care at Albert High School, yep, it's the RTC folder, I'm good to go, tap upload, and that'll automatically put that photo into that place. And that's a really, really simple and easy way to save things from your device onto the other service that you use, if it's cloud-based, so if it's OneDrive or if it's Google Drive. Now, if I go back to the share button, what you might find is that the app that you want to use isn't here. So we can see here I've got AirDrop Mail, Notes, Drive, Reminders, Books, Outlook. Something that's missing from here is OneDrive. So what I'm going to do to add apps to that little bar is if I scroll right to the end of the right-hand side, I've got the ellipsis, and the ellipsis on iPad is always something that's going to give you more options. So it's always to get more. So I'm going to tap the ellipsis, and that's going to bring up a bunch of suggestions. So if I tap, similar to when we were on the files one where it was edit sidebar, if I tap edit, you'll see it gives me again that option to toggle things on and off, and you can see I've got OneDrive there. I'm just going to switch it on by tapping and toggling it to green. I'm going to tap done. I'm going to tap done again in the top left, and we can see there's OneDrive now just next to my Google Drive. So if you find actually that you don't need reminders or books or whatever, you can also go into more, and you could potentially switch those off as well, which might be helpful if that is just, I think for some people that's just like too busy, there's too much going on. So that's a wee handy hint too. Now, one location that does not come up in this bar of app tiles is files. But that is because you currently have this thing saved to your device. So this photo is already saved in your photos. If I scroll down to the bottom, if I really wanted to put this into files, if I scroll down to the bottom, you can see I've got like loads and loads and loads of options. But in this bottom block, the top one is save to files. And if I tapped on that, that would allow me to save that to files or to my iCloud. But I don't need to do that because I already have this photo on my device, like it's already there, so I don't need to save it to my device again. So if I just go back up to these app tiles again at the top, you'll see the very first option is always going to be AirDrop. Now, AirDrop, for me, a complete game changer in the classroom. AirDrop allows you to share between devices quickly and easily. As part of your pupils' Connected Falkirk deployment, the team will work with them during the session to make sure this is turned on and to make sure that their device is renamed so that when they arrive at your classroom, they're all ready to go and set up. So if I just give this AirDrop icon a little tap just now, you'll see what happens is, if you've never used it before, it's based on proximity. So you can actually see all the devices that I've currently got in this room that are on just now. So what I would do if I wanted to obviously send this to a pupil would be just tap on their individual name. So when it comes up, I've got Kerry's MacBook Pro, Miss A Connected Falkirk, but you would obviously have each individual child's name in your class, and you can then obviously send to one or to many of them. So just for a sort of real world example of what this was useful for me, I found this really great for differentiation. So coming up to exam time with my one-to-one Nat 5, they were revising for their Reading for Understanding exam in English, which has, if you're an English teacher, you'll know different types of questions. And I had made sheets years and years ago with practice questions. And what I used to do is I used to have to print 30 of each sheet so that if all of them chose to do imagery questions, they all had access to that. And if they all chose to do tone questions, they all had access. So that was, I can't remember, Gav will maybe be able to put in the chat and remind me how many types of questions there are, but there's certainly quite a few. So it was quite a lot of photocopying and printing. But what I was able to do in a one-to-one environment was I was able to go around each group and I was able to say, okay, Gav, what type of question do you want to work on? Imagery. I had the imagery document. Boom, airdrop. Gav, there you go. There's your questions. Get started. Okay, Mary Jane, what do you want to work on? You want to work on tone? Excellent. There's the tone questions via airdrop. So that was really, really good, I thought, to get really quick and easy differentiated materials to pupils. Now, airdrop's also really good for pupils to send you things, perhaps at the end of a lesson. I found that this was really good for time saved. So at the end of the lesson, I would often have to be like, okay, well, upload your stuff to Google Classroom or upload it to here. And actually, I didn't need it to be uploaded to there. I just needed to see it. And the easiest way for me to see it was to get it onto the VLE. But actually now, the easiest way for me to see it is just to have it on my device. So I would just say, just send it to me via airdrop. And because it's super quick, it was super easy to get all that stuff right at the end of the period. And I found it much less stressful. So just to show you how quick it is, I'm sure you've probably seen airdrop before, but just in case you haven't, just to show you how quick it is, we'll just pretend this is the end of the lesson. I'm in my home screen because I'm the teacher. I have asked the pupils to send me their work. So they're going to go into whatever work it is that they're using. They're going to do the exact same thing, tap on the share button, tap on airdrop. They will find you and they will tap you. And what will happen is you'll get a pop-up to your device. It will tell you exactly who is sending it to you. So obviously I'm sending this to myself from a different device. So Miss A Connected Falkirk would like to share a photo. I can decline that or I can accept that. And if I accept it, this is a photograph. And there we go, it goes straight into my photos and it's saved there so I can access it at any time. I just want to put a wee side note on this because I'm really proud of this. This is actually pupil work. This is a pupil in S5 from Larbert who used their digital drawing apps to do some artwork. But yeah, so there you go, really easy to get pupil work to you and onto your device so that you can have a wee look at it. One practical thing here is getting them to make it really clear which work is theirs if you need to know that. So what they can do is they can quite simply go into photos and just mark up the photo in the bottom left-hand corner or the top right, whatever it is that you usually do. Write their name on the top and then send the photo if you do need to know whose is whose. Okay, and I'm aware that I'm going very fast, but just a reminder, this will all be on YouTube, so you will be able to access it at a later date. So now that we've got access to the files, we've got a chance to save them, we have looked at sharing them, let's have a wee chat then about converting files for use on the iPad. And the first and most important thing to say here is that you don't have to convert anything. So there is no requirement to convert things into Keynote or Pages or whatever. What you can do is you can make sure that the pupils have downloaded the app that is compatible with the current format that you have your resource in. So for example, if I go back into my files, I have here this very first one, Black Panther. The big P on the document tells me that's PowerPoint. So as long as my pupils have PowerPoint on their device, which they can download from the app portal, then they can get that and access it in PowerPoint. And all I would do is in my files, tap and hold the one that I want to send. It gives me lots of options again. And at the bottom, I have just a second from the bottom, share there, and I can share that with them. And again, this screen that's going to start looking quite familiar, I can do it via airdrop or whatever. So just to show you and prove to you that that definitely works, I'm just going to share from another device. So imagine I'm the pupil here on this device that you can see on the screen. And if I go onto my other device and I try to send this Black Panther PowerPoint, tap on share, tap on airdrop, find myself, airdrop it through, you will see it is currently downloading a copy. So it takes a wee second there. And there we have who is sending, so it would be the teacher name is sending, and you can see it says blackpanther.pptx, so they know that it's going to be a PowerPoint file. When they tap accept, it's automatically going to ask them what they want to open with. And you can see it's trying to get them to open it in Keynote, but that's fine. They don't have to do that. They can open it in PowerPoint. So if I tap PowerPoint, because I have PowerPoint on my device, it automatically opens it on PowerPoint, and there's my presentation, easy as anything. So you don't actually have to convert it as long as the pupil has the compatible app already on their device. So if you do want to convert existing resources into Pages or Keynote files, there are potentially some advantages that we'll come to shortly. But if you are going to do that, the conversion itself is actually pretty easy. So you've got two options. The first thing that you can do is actually convert it to a Keynote or a Pages file. So if I go back into my files, I obviously have this Black Panther PowerPoint. I know that it's a PowerPoint. If I tap and hold on it, and I go to that, again, all-important share button, I can choose to open this by just scrolling along the app tiles. I can choose to open this in Keynote. And if I do that by tapping Keynote, you will see it's going to take a minute because I think it's got like 60-something slides in it. But you will see that it will eventually import it into Keynote. But we're going to get this little message that's saying that there's a little bit of a problem with some of the import details. Now, I've got fonts missing, Oswald, Special Elite, and Roboto, and that's because I made this on Google Slides, and these fonts don't exist on the iPad, but that's okay. I'm just going to tap Done in the top right. And it's going to, likes to warn me that I've used different fonts. That's okay, we'll tap Done again. And there it is in Keynote. Now, in the top right-hand corner, you'll see the word Edit. And if I tap on that, you'll see nothing's actually happening, right? And that's because I've not actually saved this anywhere in Keynote. I've only opened it in Keynote. And if I was to go out, it would not be there anymore. So the next thing that I want to do is I just want to make sure that I've got this saved. So I'm going to go to share. I'm sorry, I did that very quick. I'll go in again. So top right-hand corner, the three dots, which always gives you more. Our share button is in there. We're going to tap share at the top. And we are going to this time save to files, because at the moment this is on the cloud and I want it to be on my device. So save to files. When I do that, it brings up this pane that's going to give me different locations. It's automatically like kind of realised that it's a Keynote, so it's putting it into the Keynote file, which is great. That's exactly where I want it to be. I could have potentially other files here. I think Gav's got a great video about setting up filing systems and stuff on your iPad. I'm not quite that organised yet, so I've only got the basic ones, but I've got Keynote here. And in the top right-hand corner, I'm just going to tap Save. And if I go back into my presentations now, again, this is similar to files, so we're in Keynote now. Left-hand side gives me all my locations, right-hand side gives me all my keynotes. In the left-hand side, I just saved that to my iPad, so locations on my iPad. I know that I saved it into the Keynote file, and if I go in there, there it is. And if I open that now, it's again giving me the warnings, but you can see if I tap that edit button in the top right, I can now make any changes that I need to make. So it's a couple of steps, but it is relatively straightforward. The one downside of this that you've probably seen is that, if I just go to slide 3 here, because the fonts were different, it's kind of rejigged the way that everything's laid out. Now, for me, this is absolutely unacceptable. Like, I can't have this on my resources that I've spent ages and ages making, and I'm sure you guys are the same. So you could go through, and now because you can edit it, go through and make the changes if you want. But see, to be honest, for me, that takes a really long time. And for a presentation like this, that if I just go down to the bottom, and I think I said it was, 66 slides, there is absolutely not a chance that as a busy teacher, I'm going to be going through that and rejigging every single one so that it looks right again. So what I would do instead is the second method, which is what I'm choosing to call the screenshot method. So this is really good for if you have a presentation where actually the transitions aren't important, or there's no moving parts to the presentation, it's just static image. So if I just go into my files again, I have a presentation that is here. I'll just go back in, sorry. A presentation here, Higher Media Unseen Analysis. You can see from the yellow icon that that's a Google Slides presentation. So it's not saved to my device. It's not saved on an Apple service. It is on Google Slides. When I tap to open it, it will open Slides. And you can see this is just quite a short presentation of getting them to compare two different film posters. So I can just use this as it is. I don't need it to do anything fancy. So to get that out, rather than going and converting it and like rejigging it all because the fonts are wrong, what I'm going to do is I'm going to present the presentation on my device. So on Google Slides, that's at the top here with the wee play button, just to make the page that I want full screen. I'm then going to take a screenshot by putting my thumb on the home button and my index finger on the power button, pressing both of those at the same time, and you'll see it's taken a screenshot. So if I now wanted to use this presentation with pupils, I can go to Keynote again, and top right-hand corner of the right-hand pane, we've got a little plus at the top. So there's a plus, a folder, some squares and whatever. The plus is always to add something new, as you would expect perhaps, plus to start a new presentation. Choose a theme. We'll just go for this basic white one. And I have to get rid of these. I'm really sorry. You maybe don't need to see that. I'm going to get rid of these extra wee boxes because I can't have them. So I'm just doing that by tapping on them and deleting them as the option comes up. Nice white presentation. Plus, again, at the top right, to add anything, it's always plus. So plus, you can see I've got options to add various different things, graphs, charts, shapes, but I'm on the media section. The top option is photo or video. I'm going to tap on that. It's going to open my camera roll. I'm going to choose that screenshot. And there we've got it in a presentation. Now, again, my pedantry is absolutely showing here because I also can't have these black bars. So if I want to make any changes to the screenshot, the little paintbrush at the top right-hand corner of Pages in Keynote is always what you do to change the style of something. So paintbrush to make any changes. You can see I've got style things, image things, arrangement things. I'm going to go into image. This is a really good tip. Crop is not called crop on Apple services. It's called edit mask. So I'm just going to choose edit mask. That's going to allow me to cut out these black bits at the side. I'm going to tap done when I'm done. And then I'm just going to move it into position. And there I've got my presentation for those kids. Really helpful for if you don't need the full presentation, you only need a couple of slides, just screenshot them and fire them into a Keynote and then fire them over to the kids. It's super, super easy. So incidentally, the screenshot method is also potentially a good way of converting PDFs to write on worksheets. If you were to take a screenshot of a PDF and put it into Pages, which I'll just take into Pages actually just now so you can see the difference. It's basically the same thing, except we automatically get given an A4 portrait rather than landscape document. So I could screenshot a worksheet and put it into there if I wanted to. But the good news is you don't actually have to. So because the iPad has inbuilt PDF writables on it, all you have to do is open the PDF, save the PDF to your device, send it to the kids, and then the kids will be able to write on it. So let's just see that in action. I've got Files again, this app that I'm obviously obsessed by. And you can see here, I'm in my Google Drive, or I'm going into my Google Drive RTC folder, and I've got here a PDF that's called Careers in Film just in the middle of the screen. I downloaded this from the Into Film website. You might have potentially resources that are PDF from Twinkle or from Tess, or even your own PDFs that you have made. Opening a PDF is a simple case of tapping on it, and it's going to open it. And you can see I can read it, which is fine, but I can't actually make any changes to it just now. But that's because, once again, it's not yet saved to my device. It's just still in that Google Drive. So the all-important share button at the top right here, give it a wee tap, save to files. It's given me again those options of where I want to save it. I'm not going to put it in any of these places. I'm just going to save it to on my iPad, which is fine. Save. I'm going to tap on done. If I go into that file then on my iPad, we can see it's now here, the into film resource. And what I can do now at the top right hand corner, you'll see there is now a little circle with a pencil in it. That's the Markup Tools. So I can tap on that and it gives me pens and pencils to work with, and I can write over it. If I actually go down to the bottom of this resource, because this has got a write on bit, I would normally print this page out for kids, 30 copies at a time for them to write on, but this way they can just do it on their iPad. So I've sent the PDF to them, they tap on the markup icon at the top right, and they can now write over the top of it. So they're going to start filming at 1400 hours. Yep, she does need makeup. Her call time is 10. She needs to be on set then for 9:45, etc., etc. I'll not fill out the whole thing. Once I'm done, tap done in the top left, and you'll see, you can actually maybe see if you look very carefully, it has actually saved that first little mark that I've made at the top. So if it saves automatically everything that you've marked up. So if I go back in and scroll to the bottom, you should see my beautiful handwriting telling us that the markup's been saved. So don't waste your time converting PDFs. PDFs can be used automatically as write-on sheets just by sending them to kids and getting the kids to save them to their device. So this brings us then, I guess, quite neatly to the next sort of section, if you like, of what we were going to speak about today, which is upgrading resources. So we've managed to access them, we've managed to share them, we've managed to convert them, and for lots and lots of people, that will be plenty. That is enough to get your head around. Like, I understand that is quite a lot. But once you maybe get used to things a bit more, or if you're wanting to stretch your legs a little bit with this, I just wanted to take some time to show you some of the ways in which converting your existing resources and then making some very small tweaks to them using the inbuilt iPad functionality may potentially prove useful. So if I go back into Keynote, I will show you a presentation that I have already made. So it's just here, Merchant of Venice. So I've used the screenshot method to get this. You can see it's just a flat image. I've just screenshotted it from the original Google Doc and put it in. And this is a legit Merchant of Venice presentation. This is what I would use in class, not the full thing, but the first little part of it. And what you can see here is we are exploring the complexities of around the ideas sort of sympathy and scorn that someone might feel for a person. And if you know this play, you'll know that this is the beginning of a character study on Shylock. Now, normally I would be the only person with this presentation and I would display it on the whiteboard. I would talk people through the tasks, which they would then do in their jotter. Everybody is familiar with this way of working. So the task here is to list reasons why people might feel sympathy or scorn for these public figures. And you can see with the Trump slide, that's basically what would be up on the screen when I was teaching normally. But if I move down to this Bieber slide, as you can see, I tried to pick as divisive figures as possible for them to discuss. What I've managed to do, because I've made this on Keynote or converted it to Keynote, is I've been able to add to that flat image just a little bit of extra scaffolding for the young people. So I've added obviously the task here and the listing reasons, and I've put some markers of like where they should be writing their sympathy and scorn and stuff. And because I'm going to send every pupil a copy via Airdrop, they're going to have a copy of all the information, but they're also going to have a copy of that sort of blank slate task slide. And they can then make their own notes as they go along. They can complete tasks on the slide and keep everything together. So it's quite good for if you, for example, are teaching a topic and you only teach that topic 2 periods a week, and then you do something else for the other 2, and then you go back to it the next Monday. Or if you're in a primary school, you teach it for an hour in the morning on a Tuesday and then you do it the next again Tuesday. Like jotters, as we all know, can get quite messy. Like it can be quite difficult to kind of keep things in order. But kind of converting your PowerPoints or your Google Slides presentations and giving each individual pupil a copy on a Keynote allows them to kind of keep everything together in the same place. And I think that's really, really useful. So thinking of the pupils then, if I'm a pupil and I'm going to complete this task, I am just going to use the little plus icon at the top right-hand corner, which is always to add things. And you'll see if I tap it, there's lots and lots of things that we can do now. Because they've got their own copy, they are only adding to their copy, leaving me with the fresh blank one that I can use next year, the year after, the year after that, the year after that. So I'm left with the original and they're all just editing their own copy. So the first and most obvious thing that they might want to do is put text on. So you can see along the top bar here, I can add graphs, I can add charts, tables, I think they're called, Kerry, tables, graphs, shapes and media. Text is in shapes. So if I just go to shapes, basic, text is at the top there. You can see it on the left-hand side, tap it, and they can put it in and they can give me their first reason for feeling sympathy for Justin Bieber. So let's say the pressure, oh, if I could spell pressure right, that'd be good for English teacher, eh? Pressure of fame at a young age might be a reason to feel sympathy for Justin Bieber. So I can type, but I could also, if I prefer to handwrite. Now again, just plus to add something. This time we're going into the media section, which is the little photos, and that gives us most of our options that seem to be the best for using with pupils. And at the bottom we've got drawing. You're about to see something very familiar because when I tap on that, here's this little set of markup tools again, and I can use these to write onto the slide. Now, one thing that I forgot to do before we started this was reconnect my Apple Pencil. So this handwriting is going to be absolutely hilarious, but I can use my finger or a stylus or an Apple Pencil or whatever to draw. And let's say another reason to feel sympathy is that there is lots of media scrutiny of Justin Bieber at a very young age as well, but just in general, lots of media scrutiny. So you can see there you can add drawings or you can write things. What I also might want to do as a pupil is I might want to add a voice recording to show my learning. So again, plus at the top, always plus to add something. In the first block, we've got photo camera and then record audio. If I tap on record audio, it's going to automatically put me into a little recording studio. And if I tap on record at the bottom middle, I can say a third reason that Justin Bieber might be someone who gets our sympathy is that he hasn't got a lot of other peers who are in a similar position to him and dealing with the same pressures. Tap stop when I want to stop. I can tap edit in the bottom right hand corner and go back and listen to it and trim it and change bits and stuff. But once I'm happy with it, tap insert in the top right hand corner. And that's going to put that little audio recording into the slide. Nice and quick, nice and easy. So, excuse me. So another little thing to talk about just while we're in here is that I kind of said at the start that having things in Keynote or Pages work really well with accessibility features. So anything that I've got typed here on my Keynote, I can tap it. So I'll just double tap the task. And if I double tap it and highlight the words that I want, you'll see here this black bar appears. Now it always appears for anything in Keynote or Pages to allow me to delete and move stuff. But just in between delete and link there, you'll see the word speak. And that's because I have set up speak select in my accessibility features, which lets the iPad read to me. So you won't hear this because I am presenting to you just now, obviously via the internet. So when I tap speak, you're not going to hear it. But if I tap speak, that would, you can see it's changed to pause now, that would read to me whatever that said, that sentence or whatever. It has to be typed though, it can't read like a picture or whatever. So that's good to know that is built in there for your learners who perhaps just like a wee bit of reinforcement or like to hear an instruction rather than read an instruction. Now, Speak Select, dictation, all the other accessibility tools, they do sometimes work on other apps. They do have built-in functionality into third-party apps sometimes, but not all the time. A lot of third-party apps have their own versions of accessibility tools, and that's absolutely fine. A lot of them are great. But using the ones that are built into the device, if they're using this device all the time, it kind of sets a little bit of consistency for use across all of the services. So that Speak Select, for example, you can use that to go onto Safari and get it to read a web page to you, and so on and so forth. So it just kind of keeps everything the same. So you can perhaps potentially see there, I've just glanced at my media scrutiny and laughed at the horrificness of the handwriting of it. But you can perhaps see there then the how the presentation materials or resources that you've spent ages and ages making years and years ago, or very recently, could potentially have just a wee new lease of life and can be used in a slightly different way. Now, I wouldn't say that this is the same as a workbook, because a workbook you design to be self-sufficient, you design for the pupils to be able to use it independently, perhaps. This really is almost like an interactive version of a presentation. They still need me to stand up and explain the bits. They still need me to have an input, but it just gives them the freedom to sort of experience that presentation in a way that's much more personal to them. It allows them to obviously annotate and make notes and whatever. And the really good thing that I found is that for revision, if they need it, and I know that I'm talking mostly to secondary teachers here for assessments and SQA and stuff, if they need it for revision, they don't just have the base presentation, they've got a culmination of all the work that they've done throughout the text or the topic, so they can go back and they can look at your slides with your explanations on it or diagrams of, you know, processes or whatever, but they also can look at the things they've added, and they can add more things, they can revise things, they can revisit sections and see how their thinking has perhaps changed, etc, etc. Now, just jumping back quickly to that voice element that we had there, that add voice. This is something that I found really exciting and really, really useful for using in a one-to-one classroom. So I'm just wanting to kind of show you some ideas of how using voice record just easily really popped into a presentation or a material might enhance things. So this is a very specific example, but hopefully you can take something from this. If I just jump over into my pages, you will see that the second document I've got here is a little bit of a spelling practice. Now, I don't know how many of you regularly work on spelling and spelling testing and stuff, but it can be quite difficult to allow independent spelling practice in the same format as the way that the pupils are tested. So just in case anyone's not aware, the testing of spelling hasn't changed much in a long, long time. It is the teacher reads the word, the pupil writes the word down and attempts to spell it correctly. And it can be quite difficult to get them to practice that without it taking up a lot of your time. You often have to schedule it into the class and you do your spelling test at the start or at the end or whatever. But if I go in here, you'll see there's my traditional spelling test on my spelling words that I might have perhaps read out to the class. But if I scroll down, you can see that just using that add voice record there, what I've done is I've just recorded myself saying the spelling words. And what the pupils can do is, if I tap it, you won't hear because, again, I'm presenting to you via the iPad. But if I tap on it, they just tap on the word and it will read the word to them and they can listen to it. And then as long as they don't use, obviously, the text to write their answer, because it'll tell them that it's wrong, if they use the drawing tool to write in their answer, you could potentially have independent spelling practice. And that's something that I think, you know, for English teachers certainly, and for primary teachers, that is quite revolutionary, because it's really hard to get that vital listening skill that is linked to spelling testing in a way that pupils can work on it independently. So another quick example of voice, this time being used as a massive time saver. And this is the potential for using it in feedback. So in Keynote here, if I just go to this work that I've got here, so I have work that a pupil has done for me. You can see that it's a practical task. Now, I love digital, I love all things technology, I love the things that it can do, but a lot of the time, I want my pupils to have a giant piece of paper and some coloured pens, and I want them to get in about it. In my classroom, you would be no stranger to all types of crafty stuff. We do tea staining, we do wax sealing, we do all that sort of hands-on good stuff. But the iPad can actually be used to really enhance those things. So here's Lucy, and she's made her piece telling me about some of the technical and cultural codes that she was trying to achieve when she dressed this set. So she's made this little set, she's took a photo of it, we've printed it out, we've stuck on a big piece of paper, and she's given me all of the things that she was trying to achieve. She's then taken a photo of that, airdropped it to me, and I've marked it digitally, so you can see in the sort of yellow here, I've highlighted little bits using markup that I just want her to kind of pay a little bit of attention to or look back on. And you can see in pink that I have wanted her to maybe give me some additional detail. Now, I don't need to test her on that. I don't need her to add to her poster. I just need a quick confirmation that she knows that stuff. And so what she's done is I've sent this back to her, and she has used that add voice to just put in, again, if I just tap it, you won't hear it, but she has just put in her answer to that question verbally. And that means, yep, okay, Lucy knows that, we can move on now. And I've got the evidence for it, and I can save it away if we need to. So if I was going to file that away for her, just to quickly show you again, 3 dots at the top right is going to give us our share button. I'm going to tap share. I'm going to go into my drive, and I would save that in my drive into Lucy's folder, and that means that it's filed away and I can delete it off my iPad now. Like, we've done all the stuff we need to do, and it can go safely into that folder. So as you can see, lots of food for thought about things that you could potentially do to upgrade your resources and get them really working well for learners. Now, I'm just going to level with you here. I'm not going to lie. I did not spend hours and hours going through each resource and making changes. I don't think that's useful, and I don't think that's helpful. It can become very overwhelming very quickly. What I did was I started with a couple of ideas, and I just used those, tried them out with the class, figured out that they did work, and then I went from there. And as I grew more confident with that, you know, maybe adding the voice type thing, as I grew more confident with it, I found more uses for it. And before long, it's like anything that, like, you know, you do in teaching practice, like the more you practice and stuff and the more you use it, you're able to start implementing it quickly and off the cuff. So it's a little bit cliche, but I really do think of the iPad as like an additional set of tools that I can dip into to enhance the classroom experience, the learning and teaching, but most importantly, the scaffolding and the differentiation that I am able to do with my resources. But really, really importantly, without me having to work very much harder to do it. I am all about trying to make my classroom life as easy as possible, and save as much time as possible. And I think there is a little bit of a learning curve to begin with, but once you get into it, it really does save you rakes of time. So the last thing that I kind of want to address in preparing for the one-to-one classroom isn't actually about learning and teaching resources at all. This is about physical resources or routines that you might want to have a think about. I think one of the main things that people ask about my experience in a one-to-one environment centres around more like everyday classroom management stuff. So the first one is usually always forgotten devices. What am I going to do when the kids come in and they don't have the devices? And for this, I would always say that, like with any major change in a classroom environment, there's always going to be a bedding in period. So constant reminders, as much as they might frustrate us, constant reminders at the end of a class or at the end of a block of time are your friend. I'm not going to lie, they might take a while to get the message, but as soon as pupils start seeing the devices used in class, they're not going to want to be without them, because if they're left out, or if they don't have the device and therefore can't do it in like the the very versatile way that maybe Keynote offers them, and they've got to only do it on paper, they won't be long in remembering to bring their device in. One thing that I found extremely useful for reminding them to bring in their device was to set a precedent at the start of every class. So when I inherited my one-to-one Nat 5 class, they had had devices for about 4 months, and they had had a very varied experience of using them. Some of them had come from classes where they'd used them every day. Some of them came from classes where they never used them, and that was fine. But I wanted them to always have them with them. And so what I did was I set a precedent when I said, okay, when you come into class every single day, you are going to take your device out, put it on the desk, take your pencil case out, put it on the desk, take your folder out and put it on the desk. All three as part of our learning materials. Even if I had zero intention of using the device that day, I still got them to take it out and put it on the desk. And it kind of got them into that rhythm and routine of like having their device ready to go at all times. The second big question then is usually around charging. Now, it is going to happen that they forget to charge their device, or that they've not, for whatever reason, been able to charge their device. And I kind of treat this in the same way that I would treat like a forgotten pencil. So there are lots and lots of reasons, as we all know, why a child might forget to bring a pencil to class. Ultimately, for me anyway, like that's not a big deal. Like there's lots of reasons, it's not a big deal. And the deal with the pencils usually is you've got to use my pencil today instead. And if you're anything like me, all your pencils are very heavily guarded, they're stickered, they're numbered, they're kept, you know, strictly under a routine. And it's the same with the charging. So I have my charger at my desk at the front. If the pupil hasn't got their charger and they want to charge their device, that's not a problem, Gav. Come down and join me. And they come down and they bring their chair and they sit at the front desk with me to do their work while the device is charging. And you will be surprised, or perhaps you won't be surprised, at how quickly they will remember to charge their device, because they do not want to sit with you up the front doing their work by themselves with you, rather than being with their shoulder partner or in the group. Now, I also had the luxury of 5 additional chargers just because I had those 5 shared devices for media. Nobody is saying that you should go and buy extra chargers. That absolutely is not something that should fall to you, and definitely not to your pocket. But if you can get your hands on extra chargers, what I did was I bought an extension lead and I stickered and sharpied the heck out of it. I stickered and sharpied every individual cable at the top end and the bottom end, every single plug. You know, it was like, do not remove, media charger number 1, this belongs to Miss Abercrombie, the whole shooting match. And what I did was I kept that extension lead at the front of my classroom for extra juice. The chargers were never removed from the bar. They didn't go wandering about the classroom. It made it easy for me to keep tabs on them. If the kids needed to charge, they would either, if they were working on something on paper, they would bring their device over and charge it at the front, or they would bring their chair down to the front and charge there until they had enough and they would go back. But I'm absolutely an advocate of this. Like, I do think that this works, because using this system, in 5 years of having those 5 chargers, I never lost one charger or one cable. But to be fair, I was like super weird about it. Like, if I was out of school for a day, I would take that charging bar and I would like lock it away in a cupboard so that like nobody else could use it. Like, if I was out of sight, then it was out of sight, type thing. So people who say that it's inevitable that chargers will go walkies, I would dispute. I wouldn't say it's inevitable. You just have to kind of make sure that you've got a good system in place in your classroom, and you know your classroom best. You know the space that you have, you know where the charging points are, you know what you have the capacity to do. But just have a little think before they all arrive with their devices about what your setup's going to be for charging, and what your lines in the sand are about the chargers. So the final one then is about managing the devices. There's often a lot of tension and nerves around the fact that there's going to be 30 devices in my classroom. How am I going to know that they're on task? How am I going to know that they're definitely working and not playing Roblox or whatever? Or on cool maths games seems to be the one that they always tend to go to. I don't know what maths teachers are doing, but they're doing something right with cool maths games. But how do you know that they're on task? How do you know that they're doing what you've asked them to do? And the answer here is Apple Classroom. So this is the app tile for Apple Classroom. You will have it on your device. I'm not going to go into it today or show you it because we don't have time, but please do look at the Connected Falkirk mega post about it, which will tell you everything you need to know. It gives you troubleshooting of what to do to get it set up. It gives you some videos showing you exactly how it works from a pupil perspective and a teacher perspective, so you know what to expect before you actually face it. But it really is excellent. It lets you do a variety of things. Just for a few examples, you can lock all pupils' screens. You can view their screens remotely from the front of the class. You can even open and lock them into certain apps for the duration of the time that you're perhaps doing something with them. It is a really powerful tool, and it is a great way of alleviating some of those concerns around an increased number of devices in class. And what you might find is that Apple Classroom is something that you adopt all the time. Equally, what you might find is that a little bit down the road, you've maybe got some classes who you don't need to use Apple Classroom with because actually you don't have those concerns with them. So I, for example, used to have Apple Classroom with one of my classes because they were, you know, notoriously very good at being off task and, you know, going into various different things that they weren't supposed to be doing and whatever. And that was fine because I had Apple Classroom to support me in that. But equally then with my higher media class, for example, I didn't need to use Apple Classroom because that just wasn't something that was a concern in that particular classroom environment with that particular group of young people. So we're about to start wrapping up then. I know that we're nowhere near the half past, which is quite good, so we're going to finish early. Just a quick reminder of Apple Teacher, which is a self-paced CLPL course. If you've not already done it, it's worth a look. If you did it a wee while ago, there is a new portfolio element to get your teeth into. Just a reminder that you cannot access this with your managed Apple ID. You do need to use a personal ID or create a new one. And that is simply because your managed ID technically belongs to Falkirk Council. So you want the accreditation on your personal ID. So it moves with you if you decide to move on. Feedback, as always, is very important to us. I know that this is the age-old sort of begging bit at the end. We do want to know what you think, particularly about this session. We're always looking to improve. The RTC is here to try and support you and put on sessions that are worthwhile for you and that are useful to you. So the QR code's on the screen. Gav's put a link in the chat. We really would appreciate your feedback, and just be totally honest. We're very open to criticism and compliment, of course, if you want to give compliments, but that is absolutely not necessary. So with that, all that remains to say is thank you very much for your time this evening. If you want to keep the conversation going over on Twitter, you can use the usual hashtags for RTC, which is hashtag Apple Teacher, hashtag Apple RTC. And you can tag us in at Falkirk RTC, or of course just the @Connected Falkirk Twitter account as well.